Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Uh,
Welcome to the first episode of Future Tech Banker.
Well, this is
Uh,
exciting. This is an
yeah,
exciting opportunity to talk to community bankers and others about what's going on in tech. And I'm looking forward to this, Alec, because you are the tech guru. You and my friend Eric Cook.
yeah, super exciting. Unfortunately, Eric's got a pretty bad cold today, so we wanted to have all three of us to talk about the show, but it's just the two of us for now, and then our special guest John Kowal will be in a minute from Peapack Private Bank. But yeah, super exciting. So, obviously, you and I have been doing podcasts for a while. I started the AI Risk Reward podcast a few years ago. We're approaching 100 episodes there, but I really wanted something that would focus more on bankers and the technology around that, and something that would be live and a little more fun than a podcast that's recorded a few weeks ago, because things are changing so fast in technology and in the world today. And this is really a great format to do that. So maybe what I'll do is I'll introduce kind of my background a little bit. And then even though almost everybody knows who you are, Jack, maybe introduce yourself. And then next time, Eric can introduce himself, and then
There
we'll
you go.
bring John on stage. So my background is as a banker. I was at Deutsche Bank and Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, kind of at the intersection of technology and banking for a very long time. I've run research departments and technology departments. I've been working with AI since 1987, which just makes me sound old, unfortunately. And just having a lot of fun running Veripath, which is an AI software company focused on kind of safety and security and making sure banks kind of do the right thing when they're using AI on regulatory compliance, but also putting cool stuff out there that bankers can use to make their lives easier when they're using AI. I'll turn it over to you, Jack.
Well, you mentioned old. You're not old. I'm old. Uh, I remember a couple of years ago when I was teaching at Graduate School of Banking in Madison. I was setting up for class, and a couple of bankers walked in, and they go, "Oh, good, we get to hear Grandpa sales today." And when I first heard it, I thought it's terrible. No, it's not. I'm still above the grass, and that's as a survivor, as somebody who's been around a long time. I'm really pleased. I've been doing this for 53 years in and around banking. I've had the great
Wow.
privilege of teaching 81,000 bankers in commercial and business banking and branches to have better sales conversations and sales managers to coach better. I've had the amazing privilege of teaching at 13 banking schools. I'm back in May at the Perry School in Michigan Bankers for my 15th year. And I'm really excited about this. My background's in radio, TV, sports, play-by-play. So, as you mentioned, we've done a lot of podcasts, and I've done a lot of podcasts. And one of the things that's really cool about this is that we've got some amazing guests coming up. I'm sure you'll kind of talk about. And John, the first one is Peapack is an interesting bank. It's been around a long time, and I've known Greg Smith, their head of commercial banking, for a long time. It's a fine bank, and it's a great example, I think, Alec, and you know better because they're a client of how a community bank that embraces AI and technology can really vault ahead of others who think it's going to go away or afraid of it or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think it's time to get John on stage here. So hopefully our engineer can figure that out. First time. There we go. Welcome, John.
Hi, John.
Afternoon,
John, it looks like
Jack.
you're in your office today.
I'm actually coming to you live from Peapack Studio here in Bedminster. So this is
Wow,
actually this is a
awesome.
green screen, but AI generator, of course.
There you
that's
go.
In
great.
light of the theme.
That's great. So, John, why don't you give the audience a little bit of your background, and then we'll start talking about the fun stuff.
Yeah, sure. So Alec and Jack, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. I'm the chief technology officer at Peapack Private Bank and Trust. So we're about a $7.5 billion asset bank in the New Jersey, New York City metro market. We have about a $13 billion wealth AUM division as well, too. I've been here for a little over 10 years now, actually, and I oversee our technology operations, support training, but also our innovation practice, which includes our AI team. So it's been an exciting time, to say the least.
Awesome. That's great. Well, look, I think AI has been in the news a lot. And obviously, I literally can't look at a screen without seeing the words anthropic mythos there. Obviously, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, kind of freaked out and pulled everybody in and said, all the big banks in and said, you guys better figure this out, figure out how to patch all these gaps, or we're gonna have a real problem. Love to get your take on that, John. Like what's going on there, and how should bankers in technology be thinking about the risks of AI as exemplified by anthropic mythos?
Yeah, so I agree. This news certainly took the industry by storm, and now there's news. Anthropic is investigating potential unauthorized access to the platform as well too. So we don't necessarily know who has access to it. The interesting thing in the industry is that there's been some mixed reaction here, but here's my take. Right, this is definitely a time to reevaluate your approach on cybersecurity. Speed's going to be the essence. The containment of an attack, if it breaches your network, is going to be the essence. And I think a lot of the industry has ignored containment, eviction, et cetera, because no one wants to admit an attacker will get on a network, right? But we need to now plan, well, what if that were to happen? And because the question is this happening, right? It's at what velocity is this change occurring? So AI is absolutely changing the cyber threat landscape. And the other way, you need to be prepared. Now, the good news is the banking industry is probably the best prepared industry to handle this threat. We've seen similar zero-day exploits. I was thinking back recently out to the shadow brokers leak back in 2016. And for those of you who don't recall, that's where attackers were able to find a treasure trove of NSA zero-day utilities and basically release them to the markets, right? And those exploits led to some of the most powerful ransomware that we've ever seen, and some of the most rapid patching and also complicated patching we've seen. It took down global companies. There's a major shipping line that got taken down, but it was about a mass release of zero-day exploits. This has the potential to be much worse. But again, we're an industry that's well prepared, and I think we're confident to handle this threat. But it's going to have to be watched very closely. This is not something to take lightly.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I'm curious, John, you're $7.5 billion bank. You're very forward thinking. Your president and CEO, Doug Kennedy, has always been that way. And people like Greg Smith and others are pretty innovative. I'm curious, how do you staff? How does a community bank, and you especially, staff your IT department with risk and compliance people, et cetera, to meet these changes? I mean, I was looking today. Evidently, ChatGPT just came out with 5.5. Lord knows whatever that means. I'm a sales guy, so I don't know much about it. But how do you staff to make sure that the risks that you are faced with on a daily basis are mitigated?
Well, and that's a great question. Working with partner companies is very important, right? Because you need to have the economies of skill and scale of the largest companies out there. You can't use the fact that if you're a small, mid-sized bank, that's an excuse that you don't need to take these concerns seriously. That said, though, when we talk about risk around what we're looking at with Mythos, right, or even just a general risk around AI, it is time that companies say, well, we do need internal talent that understands this risk, that can interpret this risk, and that can handle this risk. It doesn't mean that you need to hire 100 people just like the mega banks do, because obviously that's not feasible. You can use vendor partnerships to augment that. But it does mean that you do need expertise in house. I think we're at that point now where that really is going to become common amongst industries. And, it doesn't mean we need a dedicated role, but we can have folks in information security roles not understanding these risks, not understanding risk around AI in general, because this is something that is going to be very important in an industry going forward. So you can staff it commensurate with your size, but you do need to staff it.
Yeah, super important. So talk a little bit about some of the use cases right now that you think are exciting for bankers, John.
Yeah, so we're doing a lot of work on AI agents, with digital employees, but a lot of our use cases were around development, programming. So we had built a data warehouse about 2 years before we really started getting AI. We've been on our AI journey for about 3 years now. And one of the first things we realized is our ability to do very complex data analysis. Now, we used to do that, but we used to pay consultants hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And, we kind of hit 2024 and we said, well, we don't necessarily need those consultants anymore. We haven't actually requested any SOWs. We're now doing this stuff with AI. We're doing it faster. And it's led to some of the most sophisticated reporting on clients, relationships, and financials that we've ever had before. And that's really exciting. Fast forward to more recently, we've had a major effort around digital employees. And you're hearing this around the industry and outside the industry. So think about this. We have a digital employee in finance that will double check all GL entries, make sure you have the right evidence supporting them. It's not a control. It's double checking everything. It's the pursuit of perfection, right? We don't want any mistakes, even on well-controlled processes. And the digital employee works kind of the way we do. It has access to Teams for sending urgent messages or things that are time sensitive, has access to Outlook email when it needs to send something that's not time sensitive. This is the next evolution of AI. It's not a novelty. There's a purpose that digital employees are much different than AI chats or even AI agents. Think about it's an AI that sits on top of workflows, AI agents, data warehouse queries, and it's interactive, right? So we're going from a chatbot that you have to ask a question to and you wait to get a response to something that's proactively reaching out to you, to something that's doing things on schedule, and also, again, something that you can interact with. It's a really exciting time to start seeing how this technology is evolving. AI has far from plateaued. There's going to be a very exciting next few years.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a very interesting podcast in general, because Alec is so focused and his Veripath does such a great job with AI risk and compliance and things like that. And then you've got me, who's really focused on having sales conversations, people having sales conversations. And Eric, when he joins, is going to be around marketing. So this is going to be really interesting. And we're going to come at the guests, I think, from a variety of different perspectives. So here's my next question to you. So you've got all these employees. How many employees do you have, John?
Around 750.
All right, 750 people. Now, a lot of those are client facing, and some of those are not, but all of the 750 are going to need to learn how to use these tools. What have you done? How has your training changed, whether it's client facing or backshop training? How has your training changed to accommodate all of this new technology and AI?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think you need to build a culture around AI, right? I'm hearing a lot of companies have started to implement requirements. You have to use AI chatbots, multiple times a month, and it's on your performance report. With respect to those companies, I think that's a last ditch effort, and I hope to never have to do that. We are seeing nice exponential growth of our AI tools, and the way that we approached it was we have about 29 AI champions. So throughout our bank, representing every division of the company, and they have a few responsibilities. One is to learn AI. And again, this is not a management committee, by the way. These are folks that are tech forward in their departments, interested in this technology, excited about it, and they have a few responsibilities. So again, learning AI, training AI to their teams, and also governing the use of it. So when you have people who have access to AI chat, again, it's hard to guarantee that they're not using it in ways that you wouldn't want them to. We can monitor it, but again, AI should be replacing a control, for example. So we need to make sure that we understand every AI use case in every department, and that's where our AI champions also come in. So I think continuous training as well is important. This isn't something that you want to just train one day and say, like, kind of like we do with typical banking system, right? The system comes out, we train on it, create some procedures, on to the next thing. This is something you need to be engaging with your staff monthly, quarterly. We actually have a quarterly bank-wide webinar. It's really well attended. About half the bank attends it live, and we get about 30-35% that watch the recording, and the other 15-20%, we'll talk to later. But again, it's really about getting that great engagement and just keeping people interested, having fun with it, keeping people excited about the technology. Building a culture isn't easy, right? But we do need to say, when we're talking about AI, we need to build that culture to embrace it, or it just fades away.
Yeah. So, speaking of culture, as many people know, I was a chief risk officer for 14 years. And I was at the Pennsylvania Bankers Tech Conference earlier this week and spoke, which was great. It was a great group. They had great questions. And the best thing that ever happened for me, not for most people, but for me, which is there was a panel of 4 regulators that spoke right after me. Right. So most people are like, oh no, regulators. And I'm like, awesome regulators, right? Like, I love talking to regulators. So I'm such a policy wonk. Anyway, so so a couple things there. One is, the FDIC collaborated with NIST and the Cyber Risk Institute, and now they've rolled out some basically guidelines, the AI risk management framework for finance. And they were talking a little bit about that and how, the larger banks are obviously adopting this very quickly. And now with Mythos, obviously that's just going to speed up. There's a lot of stuff in there about cybersecurity and keeping data safe and stuff like that. But what I thought was fascinating was one of the regulators there, who shall remain nameless, said, look, like a bank who shall remain nameless came to them and said, look, we didn't roll out AI to everybody at the same time. And then I'm not seeing if this really happened or not, but let's say hypothetically this happened to a friend. Someone took a picture of client data with their phone and then put it in Chat GPT, right? Like, what does that mean? Well, I raised my hand as like, that's a data breach, right? Like, if it's a public version of Chat GPT, that's literally a reportable data breach. So obviously, you gotta, a lot of this is around, you were talking about training and coaching, and it's not just, training and coaching for like, hey, here's the cool stuff you can do. It's also around risk management, right? And what are some of the risks that you're thinking about with AI, John? And then how do you mitigate them, as well as obviously the training?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Let's address that scenario directly, right? We are now in a world where, if you want to use corporate information in a personal GPT, you can take a picture of your screen, and ChatGPT will use that as a data source. You don't need to exfiltrate the document. Now, that's not a tip. You're breaking several laws doing that, right?
Right.
But that is the
Right.
reality we need to face. So a lot of the traditional DLP solutions that prevent that document being exfiltrated, yeah, that's a valid source for a GPT to use. So why would people do that, right? What are we talking about there? Well, that's shadow AI is really what that is. They're using personal AI tools. And so why do they do that? Well, typically because their company is not providing them with AI tools to use at a corporate level. That's why, and Alec, I've talked about this before. I don't believe that any company has successfully banned AI. I think that it's just the employees are using it. It's just they're using the personal versions, which can be very dangerous. And I remind everyone too, personal versions are not just the personal version of ChatGPT. They could have downloaded some who knows what app from the App Store that is actually, we're not talking about learning from the model or training the model. We're talking about they're actually intercepting everything that you're uploading.
Sure.
We don't know what personal GPT device products that these people are using. So that's why the risk is shadow AI. And to me, a lot of the answer is we'll provide a corporate product that people can use that works well and that is enterprise secured. Because that's how you prevent that. A lot of these people probably know that they're violating policy. They might not know the severity, like you mentioned, Alex. That is a reportable data breach.
Yeah.
But that's how you can solve that. There's there are definitely ways to do this wrong. Again, it's a misconception that there's not a right path forward, but it's also a misconception that just because the big banks are using AI means that you can just start using it however you want and it's globally acceptable, right? You don't want to even use a paid version of ChatGPT with corporate data. You want to be on the enterprise platform, right? Not a paid consumer version. Obviously, it's worth talking about risk of hallucination. And, this is something I see some banks getting wrong as well, too. Might be a different opinion, but I'll share with you. I had a vendor tell me, say, well, this AI solution, we actually guarantee 99.5% accuracy. And I said, that's not nearly enough, for what you're trying to do with this product. It's not to say we can't use solutions like that, but it does mean we have to have a human in the loop. It does mean that we can't just rely on it to make a decision. It doesn't mean it shouldn't be making decisions on our clients, their accounts, their loans, et cetera. So there's definitely risk with AI, but there are proper frameworks and there are great products to move forward with. We have the infrastructure, we have the frameworks, and as you mentioned, we have that regulatory support where they're saying, hey, this does make sense to explore.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's definitely true. One of the things to think about also is, look, that the regulators are paying attention now. And you go back and look at, let's say that just take the FDIC, for example, the prior year, they had 944 reported matters requiring board attention. Like, how many of those are going to be because of AI this year? Probably a lot, right? And don't let that be your bank, right?
Yeah. Right. And I think we both talk to banks and it's like, I don't know if I'd do that. Right. Again, not to say they're wrong, but a lot of people, obviously I'm on this podcast talking to you both and they say, well, they're taking an innovative approach, but there's a lot of lines we won't cross, right? We don't want it autonomously making decisions on things. It's a great, and that's the funny thing about AI. It's such a powerful tool. We found so many use cases, but still not having crossing into decisioning or authoritative, suggestions or anything like that. We have so many other use cases for it that involve human review, and it's changing the way our company operates. It's making us more competitive. There's no reason for us to pursue, hey, we need an AI that does loan decisioning, for example. It can double check things for us, but it can improve the process without taking over the process, right?
Yeah, totally makes sense.
I had a great sales manager from North Carolina once tell me, you can teach a turkey to climb a tree, but it's better to hire a squirrel. Where am I going with? As an IT professional, the last office you probably ever want to visit is human resources. But now with AI, you better be hiring squirrels who understand going into the bank how to be proficient enough with these tools so that they can speed to performance as fast as possible. I'm curious, John, in your human resource hiring, whether that be questions or role plays or things like that, how have the hiring practices changed as it relates to hiring people who understand and are kind of proficient with AI?
Jack, it's interesting. I think as technology grows, we're almost seeing the opposite, that we don't need to go searching for this kind of talent or exposure. People are coming to us excited to know that we're embracing it, right? And we're probably seeing more of that because everyone's using it in their personal lives, right? They've at least tried it, but we're starting to see, and I'm sure you're all seeing this, where more and more people are taking out their phones and looking up something on ChatGPT. So when they hear of a company that's embracing the technology, that offers it to all of their employees, they say, I would love to use it in my professional work. And it took some time to get there. It's funny, especially as we bring on folks from universities, right? I think early on, and I'm on the advisory board at Montclair State University for one of the departments, and at Fairleigh Dickinson University here in New Jersey for one of their divisions as well too. So I spent a lot of time talking about how we can integrate AI into education. And it's funny because as we bring in the interns, initially we would ask them, well, are you going to use AI to help you with your internship project? And they say, oh no, we would never do that because that would be disrespectful and that's cheating. I said, no, you should use AI. It's to build the foundation. Obviously, you're not going to go up on stage and read a script written by AI, but absolutely you should be using it as a tool. We're seeing a trend away from that. We're seeing people are eager to embrace it. And we're seeing that people want it in their working environment. Pretty soon it would be like applying for a company and finding out that they don't let you use the internet. But remember, in banking, maybe 10 to 15 years ago, most banks didn't give tellers any access to the internet and some of their branch staff. And it was only reserved for certain people in operations, and even same for email. But nowadays it's table stakes. And I think we're seeing that shift pretty early in the technology cycle, but we're seeing that shift now.
Yeah. And how about and obviously you guys have a trust or wealth management department as well as the regular bank. And what do you see is that like the differences there between use of AI in the trust department versus versus the bank side?
I think traditionally, the trust and the wealth divisions of companies have always been seen almost stereotypically as lagging behind in technology, and we've always made it a focus that shouldn't be the case. But at the same time, I think we start to see the opposite evolving. These are divisions that are highly focused on client service, and I think it's important to note that again, it's not to say, hey, we improve client service by throwing AI at our clients. But there's actually a McKinsey study that I love to cite. It's they found that on the commercial banking side and same on the wealth side, client-facing employees are spending about 25 to 30% of the time with clients. So one of the worst industries in that regard. And if we can take away, and again, you all know why, right? It's administrative overhead. It's the tasks we ask them to do, the approvals we ask them to get, the work that they have to do after they talk to their client. And if we can even double that and be double the average bank, amazing, right? If we can get that up to 80% of their time is spent with clients, I mean, we're a real competitive force in the region. So people look at AI, well, how do we improve customer service? Oh, let's give our clients a chatbot. Let's have AI answering the phones. And you bring that to a wealth company and they say, absolutely not. We're people first. Our bank is people first too. And we take that same approach. But we're people first. We want to get the people to you. We want to get them back to what they're good at doing, back to their clients. And AI absolutely helps us do that. So that's why we're seeing some really interesting use cases in wealth, because we're getting wealth managers back to their clients. That's a big deal. And that's a real competitive advantage.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's
John,
true with commercial as well. And I'm curious about commercial. I've done some studies with some bankers, and it takes them about an hour and 7 minutes to prepare for a call, research for a call. That doesn't even take into account their ability to take the research and connect it to strategy. I'm curious on the sales side, the commercial sales side, bank to business, what you've seen in the industry, or maybe what you've done around helping your bankers be more efficient and effective in the call planning process.
Yeah, great question, Jack, because I think that there's this thought that when we look at AI, it's about operational efficiency, right? It's all about the back office. Well, and it's an easy trap to fall into, right? We constantly have to say, how are we improving the client experience? How are we helping our clients? How are we helping our frontline bankers? And so that's been a focus of ours for some time now. And it started with, small, we have build tools that we can prepare pitch presentations for new prospects, right? So instead of spending time in PowerPoint, creating slides and moving things around and getting stuff from marketing, it's all in one spot, right? So, but then how do we go further? We're actually launching AI-powered meeting prep tools. So think everything you need to know about your client, the deterministic stuff like the financials, recent conversations in the CRM, but also things that AI can help us source: news about the company, news about the leadership, news about their industry, some relevant questions you could ask. And listen, today that's a wow moment, and I think we're seeing that. It certainly impresses our clients and prospects when you walk in the room and you know about them. It kind of almost feels like you've been working there for a few weeks, right? The thing though I look at is I say tomorrow that's table stakes, right? Because even today, vendors come in, they meet with me, And I spend, 30 minutes giving them the background of the company. And, they're surprised to learn that we moved into New York City as a bank over 2 years ago. And I can't help but sit there and say, if you just searched our company on AI in 5 minutes, you would have found this out. And we would have skipped this whole conversation. And it feels a little unprepared on their part, right? And so again, we're already seeing that shift from wow moment to this is the basics that you need in sales. The problem though is that while that shift's happening, if you're not building solutions to answer that call and saying, hey, you can prepare for a meeting in 10 minutes instead of 2 hours, but it's the same material that used to take you 2 hours to prepare for. If you're not thinking about that now, it takes a time to develop all that. So you're a year out from having it, if not a little bit more, and you're going to start falling behind. So the whole marketing side of this is absolutely critical. Understand your client, understand your prospects. This is what AI is enabling companies to do. It's time to embrace it.
Yeah, absolutely. So John, do you have any questions for us?
Well, Alec and Jack, I'd definitely be curious to know what your thoughts are on the state of the banking industry, especially we have community banks, regional banks, and obviously the mega banks, right? Where is everyone falling in right now? Are you seeing progress? Are there things that are exciting, or is this going to continue to be a challenge for the smaller banks?
Yeah, great question. Well, let's start with the big banks, right? So there's two aspects of AI for the big banks, and let's start with the cybersecurity aspect, right? So at the prior RSA cybersecurity conference, the JP Morgan chief information security officer very famously sent an open letter to their more than 300 software providers, most of which are software as a service providers. And the short version, I'll paraphrase it, is he said, please, 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 for the love of God, start prioritizing cybersecurity over new features. And he said in the letter, basically, almost every week, what do you guys gets hacked or compromised? And we spend significant resources kind of ring fencing the damage at JP Morgan, right? So if we ask ourselves the question, is that going to get better or worse with AI? It's probably going to get worse, right? As the bad guys figure out new holes in the armor or whatever, because if you're a bad guy, you just need to find the one hole. If you're a good guy, you got to patch 100, right? So I think right now kind of advantage bad guys to some degree. The other side of that is they're spending $15 billion a year on AI and doing lots of, very cool stuff, some of which I've seen, some of which I'm sure is still a secret, as are a lot of the other, very large banks. But they've hired, thousands of AI engineers, right? Like, so they're kind of at a different level. And I don't think that community banks should kind of try to play that game, right? Like it's not about hiring 1,000 people to build out AI. It's just you're not going to have the resources for that. It's what you were talking about, John, with the commercial and the trust department. Like, how can we use AI so we can get more time back with, FaceTime with our clients, right? Because that's what the clients really want. And that's what's going to separate community banking from bulge bracket banking. As you talk about, I think the mid-tier banks, so just below the bulge brackets, I think that's where a lot of the problems are. Because when you have thousands of people and lots of cool AI tools out there, someone has installed OpenClaw, right? Someone has downloaded the wrong app from the App Store that's been compromised. And we had one pretty large bank who shall remain nameless that approached us and said, oh my God, Alec, I think there are 260 pilots of different AI things going on at my bank that I know about. Like, we need some help with AI governance lifecycle, which is one of the things that we do. We basically coordinate everything whether it's running on our system or not, we can keep track of it basically, right? And I think that's going to become a bigger and bigger thing. And by the way, the regulators earlier this week on this panel were like, yeah, everybody's got to have an inventory of their technology. And that includes like everything you're doing. Yeah, got an AI agent, it's better be in the inventory, right? Got an AI workflow, better be in the inventory, right? So, kind of forewarned is forearmed. If you're not doing that today, that's going to show up in an exam, right? They're going to ask you for your inventory of AI models and agents and various other things. And if you don't have it, you will be sad.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll take a little different stance. I started my banking career around the time Abe Lincoln was in office, and um, back then there were about 14,000 banks in America, and you had to just be a criminal or just really stupid not to make money in banking. And then came the deregulation, and then everybody wondered what the heck to do. And now there's about 4,000 banks. Uh, and so this whole idea of human in the loop is so critical to me. When AI can teach me and actually sink a 10-foot putt for me, then I'll class it a great success. Until then, I still have to make a putt. And so there are a lot of banks who bring in a lot of outside resources. CRM, 80% of them fail. And the main reason is because senior managers like Doug Kennedy and Greg Smith, who are very engaged, aren't very engaged with the CRM. They buy it and they say, here, I'll write the check and you guys go. Things like RelPro, Vertical IQ, Sales Navigator. I'm a big fan, as people know, of Link. But unless those tools are used in a culture where there's accountability, not only for risk, that's the main, but for sales accountability and leadership accountability, till that happens, community banks are still going to continue to struggle, and there's going to be less and less of them, unless and until CEOs of banks say, enough is enough. We've got these tools. And by God, I don't care how good you are as a banker. I don't care if you've been here for 329 years. You are a part of the culture. You are going to use these tools, and you're going to use them in the way that is best for our organization. So AI is a critical tool, and I use it all the time. But it's a cultural tool. And I think, John, it's people like you at Peapack who have not, you're not an IT person, you're a culture person. And you know that just buying a tool and pushing it out there is not going to make this happen. And you've articulated that really well. And I'll just say one more thing. The IT professional of the future in banking has got to have your chops, has got to have your mindset. Because if you put a green eye shade on and sit in the corner and just push out software and technology, the bank isn't going to be a winner that way.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, Jack. Appreciate the kind words. I'm just a guy who likes technology, but the culture tends to come with it, which is exciting. We kind of have a saying here. You don't have to use AI. Right? We're not forcing it right now, but you do have to try it. You have to at least try it. You have to listen on the training. And when we started with AI, it was, hey, technology is deploying AI chat. Technology is deploying AI meeting summaries. Right? We had to kind of start the fire, right? We had to kind of start the conversation. But we knew already that it would have to reverse and very quickly where the business lines would ask for technologies and develop the use cases. And I think that can be a hard transition to make where it's not, okay, well, technology is defining use cases, technology is building the AI agents, and some people hide behind governance. But again, business lines can govern technology use as well too, especially if you have focused people in it like our AI champions. But we're at the point now, and again, we've been at this for about 3 years, puts us kind of vaguely into the early adopter category, right? But we're at the point now where our business lines are sending us no shortage of use cases. And sometimes they're not necessarily designed to be highly technical people, but they'll say, hey, here's an inefficiency. I think AI can help here. And the answer might not be AI, but we're really seeing the largest process improvement project our bank has ever undertaken happening right now. And it's a really exciting thing. And it's driven by the lines of business. Because otherwise, you do get to that point where it's, hey, you're using this software, you have to use it because we just spent a lot of money on it. And people are kind of making up uses. It turns into actually they're wasting time by using these solutions. That can't be the case. And it shouldn't be. This technology is too exciting, too promising. Every organization has people in their organization that are excited about this, that want to embrace it. You have to go after those people and embrace it and work with them and build that culture. Again, this is like very few times in the history of technology. It feels very much like when the internet first became a thing. It's exciting. This isn't a new banking platform that we need to force people to use and attend mandatory trainings and give them little quizzes on it. People want to use this, so embrace that.
Yeah. I'd love to, for our kind of last segment here, think a little bit about something exciting and something scary that might happen over the next year or so in the banking space. So, John, why don't we start with you, and then Jack, and then I'll go last and try not to repeat anything.
So I think exciting is what's going to happen to banks that embraces technology, especially community banks, right? Smaller banks, because for a long time, the criticism was, listen, you guys are on one of three cores. You're basically selling the same products, and everyone says, well, we differentiate based on our people, right? So we look at all these banks to say they're operating very similarly. And in some cases, we're stuck with these bank-in-a-box solutions. But now with AI, we can build a lot of customization, a lot of custom solutions. We can innovate in new ways that only the big banks used to be able to do. And that's even, for the regional banks as well, too. So it's less bank in a box technology and more specific solutions for our specific client needs. And that's really compelling. Again, I don't think everyone will make it, but this is a really interesting time for community banks to become ultra competitive against even the mega banks embracing this technology. I'm really excited to see how the community banking industry advances because of this technology and some of the new innovations and new ideas that come out. It's like starting in a whole new industry. So that's what's exciting. What's scary? We just talked about Mythos, and I mentioned, listen, we're an industry approaching this with a level of confidence. We know we need to address this seriously, but we're a well-positioned industry to address Mythos. I am concerned about all the other industries. There's some that are going to handle well, but listen, mom and pop shops, the mid-market commercial, the small commercial. And here's the reality. Everyone is already seeing sophisticated attacks like they've never seen before. Voice impersonation comes to mind. No one's going to take time to impersonate the CEO of a 200-person company. Now AI can kind of do that, even autonomously. You can say, hey, create impersonations of all these companies, CEOs, and start calling people. And so now these smaller companies are seeing sophisticated attacks that were really only seen at the large enterprises. That's very concerning. We're doing a lot of outreach to our clients, a lot of webinars. And listen, we succeed when our industry succeeds. I encourage every bank to be talking to their clients and reaching out to their clients on these threats because it's a scary world out there. And the mid-market, the small businesses are absolutely in the crosshairs in a way they've never been before. And that is very concerning. We can fight that as an industry, but we have to start now because they're seeing it now and it's only going to get worse.
How about you, Jack?
Yeah, what's exciting for me is that our industry has decided that technology and innovation are not going away. We've been traditionally a very conservative industry. We've been well known for that, but innovation is creeping in. So one of the exciting things for me is that the industry is hiring people like John, people that have come from outside of banking, who have this unique perspective of other kinds of companies in industries that can lead the IT vision going forward. And banks are also hiring chief innovation officers, which kind of bridges that gap between marketing and sales and IT and all the rest of it. I think the challenge for me is, and this is going to maybe surprise you because it has nothing to do with AI. One of the challenges for community banks is that it is not embraced marketing as a C-suite position. Too often what happens is banking hires marketing because they're the and pat you on the head, nice people just out of college or what have you. And I remember I was a bank marketing director, and my bank president used to tell me the two most important things in life, in your life, are put an ad in the paper once a week that my wife likes because she owns 54% of the bank, and make sure there's enough dog biscuits in the drive-in. And unfortunately, a lot of community banks are still in that mode where marketing is the people that have this budget for church ads. And we need to get better at this. We need to say, marketing, you are a C-suite person. You need to learn the business of banking. You need to learn how banking makes money. You need to connect that to the marketing and sales process. And you need to use and help our people use AI more effectively. It can be done. I still don't see it after many, many.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, so for me, the thing that's really exciting in the future, also a little scary, is agentic commerce, right? So as opposed to me sitting there going like, wow, am I just going to go to Amazon and buy a pair of sneakers, or I'm going to look at 5 sites and get the best price? I'm just going to have my AI agent go do that for me and figure it out. And the thing we don't know is like, whose agent is that? Is that the bank's agent? Am I going to log into my Peapack account and, have my Peapack shopping agent go buy those sneakers? Or is it going to be like Amazon, or is it going to be a fintech company? I have no idea. It's starting. I think one of the fintech companies has rolled something out. I haven't tried it. Don't know how good it is, but I think that whole world is going to be really interesting over the next couple of years, and it will probably also involve stablecoin and various other interesting blockchain things. That could get scary too if that goes wrong. But the thing I'm actually, and I'm going to give credit to the Florida's, to Kathy and the Florida Bankers Association on this. I was at their Capital Day in Tallahassee, and they were really focused on elder fraud. And I think this is super scary. And at that point, the particular piece of legislation that they were working on is basically labeling these basically crypto ATMs with, if you're standing here, you're being defrauded, right? You're being tricked, with a giant label like that. Because literally you'd see people feeding $100 bills in there that are getting sent off and never coming back, right? But it goes well beyond crypto and AI. There's romance scams and various other things. And I think that this is not something we can legislate away. And it is, I mean, if I can imagine a more, if I like my dad banking in a community bank when I'm worried about elder fraud, to be clear, because when he walks out there in there and goes, I want to take 100 grand out of my account, the teller's going to go like, George, what's up? Right? Like buying a boat today. Right. And if he says, well, I'm going to wire this to my crypto buddy in China. They have my phone number there, and they're going to call me and say, hey, your dad's trying to take 100 grand out and send it to his crypto buddy in China. And I'll be there in about 5 minutes to talk him off the ledge. Right. Like if that person's going into a large faceless bank, they're probably walking out with the money. Right. So it's something that is rampant. It's romance scams and crypto scams and business scams, and a lot of them are targeted at the elderly, and it's concerning. And so I think this is both educating our clients, as well as educating the front line to be alert for this stuff. Again, not that community banks aren't already doing that. I'm telling you, this is going to get worse. And sadly, it's going to get worse because AI is going to be able to fake almost anything pretty soon. I saw a fake copy of a bank check on LinkedIn yesterday. Hey, I used AI and created a fake copy of bank check. I mean, including the signatures. I'm like, oh. So anyway, well, John, it's been great having you on the show. Thanks for coming on the first episode of Future Tech Banker. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a lot of fun.
Yeah. And next week, we'll be back with Eric Cook, the third host, and our next guest. We're going to tease out a few of the guests on our various social media pages if you're interested who's coming down the pike. And thanks everybody for watching the show. All right, so ended the stream.